Hey, what's up everyone? It's Shamrock here. I hope you guys are having a good week so far with the new affixes. This is boss guide for Ner'zhul on a 25, and this was last week, so it's Tyrannical, Bursting, and Grievous as the affixes. So Ner'zhul is a really tough boss, especially on higher Tyrannical keys. It can be really tough, especially if either you have to bait yourself as well as heal, or if you maybe have a ranged DPS who even if they are good at baiting, sometimes it just like the situation of the boss where the cone is or anything like that can cause them to have to bait in a bad spot, and it can really throw the fight for a loop. So anyways, this we actually didn't time this key. We were a few seconds over after killing the boss, but also we missed some trash apparently, which we didn't even realize until after we killed the boss. So we were probably more like a minute off total. Anyways, I'm just going to show you what I did, kind of sort of my cooldown usage, and a few tips to try and keep your group alive for this boss. Thankfully, we had some ranged DPS here, so I did not have to bait, which is great. And they didn't do a bad job at all. There were just a few moments where things got a little bit spicy, but that's okay. That's kind of a given with this boss, like I said, especially because it's such a long fight on higher tyrannical keys, because the amount of DPS you have to put into the ad wall is pretty intense. So normally you will have lust going into this boss on higher tyrannical keys, just because of the time that it takes to kill all the bosses. Probably the best just general tip I have for this boss is put Earth Shield on whoever is baiting. So if it's one person, that's great. If it's two people, then kind of just maybe take a guess at who it's going to be. I think in this one I normally put it on the priest. You can also put it on like the squishier of the ranged DPS. You'll also see me accidentally put it back on the tank a few times, and that is just muscle memory. It should technically be on whoever's baiting the whole time. And that's because when the ability, I think it's called Omen or something, goes out, it's going to do a huge chunk of damage to them unless they can get away like immediately. So it just helps you keep them alive and takes a little bit of the stress off of that. Otherwise, when the wall comes out, another good general tip is get as much DPS in as you can, because on higher tyrannical keys, these walls have a lot of health, and every little bit helps. You'll often have times where you basically get to the very edge of the room and you are still and you're barely killing it. So just make sure you help as much as you can, but also it's important to keep everybody alive. Also during the walls, I find that's a pretty good spot to sort of take your time to heal everybody up, so that you kind of go into the next round of omens with everybody at full health. It will help out. Obviously on a week like this with Grievous, it's a little bit easier said than done, but that being said, just take whatever any calm moment you have. Yeah, you should be getting some DPS in as well, but you really need to make sure you're topping everybody up so that the next thing that happens doesn't kill everybody or put you really behind. Because if the omen is baited in a wrong spot, just like it is here, where it's kind of towards the center and it's really really chunking the group down, it's important to stay ahead of the game. I would say you don't want to be playing catch up this game. You want to be able to keep people up as high as you can, and then sort of just have to manage them through the fight. So that set of baits was pretty good. The worst case scenarios for this fight is when the bait happens in the middle of the room and you can't really escape it, or when the bait happens at the other edge of the room that the wall is walking towards, because then you kind of slowly have to go towards the omens as you kill the ads, and it can get a little bit spicy. And I think that does happen towards the end of the fight, so you'll see kind of how I deal with it. But anyways, because this fight is so long, I would say be pretty liberal with your cooldowns. Like Ancestral Guidance you should definitely try to use towards the beginning, if anything just to save on some mana, but also because you can DPS while you use it and get some DPS in, and it will still heal the group. But also, most importantly, because it's only on a minute and 30 cooldown, it will be up, probably another 2 times throughout the fight. So definitely begin with that one, and then, use it kind of on cooldown as you can. I've also already used Healing Tide because it's such a long fight. Once again, even the 3-minute cooldowns, if you use them towards the beginning, they will be up towards the end. Just try not to have a situation where you have no cooldowns up. It's kind of inevitable towards the end if a lot of damage is happening, but you do want to make sure that you sort of have a cooldown for emergencies. All right, so ad selection, usually the tank will sort of be consistent with that. Choosing an ad towards the middle will give you the most time. However, it also does the most damage to the group because it's likely going to be closer to the omens. And then choosing an ad on the edge is the opposite. You probably have the least amount of time, but if it's away from the omens, the group is going to be taking less damage, which is honestly, it's either or, because even if you have a little bit less time, if the group is taking less damage, you as a healer can spend more time DPSing, which is pretty great. Once again, this video is slowed down, and also there's an ability tracker on the top left, so you can kind of see what I'm casting and when. A very important thing as well is try not to bait the malevolence cast towards whoever's baiting. So the people who are baiting, try to stay on the other side of them, because because it's a cone and it gets wider the further away it is. If it targets them and they're already running from an omen, or they're low health, or they're scrambling, it can cause them to panic, and it's not great. So you definitely want to try to aim those malevolences away. And on that topic, while the ad wall is coming, the best practice is to try and bait those malevolence casts towards the sides, either towards the outer edge or towards the inner edge. It doesn't matter. It's just going to give you more room to kind of run back, because if you bait that cone directly towards like where everybody's standing, like in its kind of center, it's going to be really hard to get away from. But here's a great example of like the worst possible thing that can happen. You're down to the last second on that ad, you get an omen, and it just chunks everybody out. So that's why you kind of want to save a cooldown there. I had Slink, which actually worked perfectly. I'm not sure if we would have survived that without anything else but Slink. So yeah, you definitely want to try and save something for an emergency. But because once again it's such a long fight, don't be too stingy with your cooldowns. Like having one, like a Slink or Ascendance up in an emergency is great. But eventually you're going to hit a point in the fight, like I did now, where you don't have anything. So that's where you really just want to pump out your lesser cooldowns, like Nature Swiftness or Primordial Wave, all that stuff. And like I said, don't fall behind. Like if you're not worried about mana, you either have mana pots or you have some mana talents. Like don't wait to heal people right away. And like, although it's important to get as much DPS in as you can, especially on these higher keys, it's more important that you keep the group up, because first of all, anyone dying is going to cost you a little bit of time on the timer, and second of all, those DPS, if they're doing their job correctly and they're good at their class, are going to do way more DPS than you could ever do in the few seconds that it might take you to heal them. So some other general tips: try to give these purple waves from the ads a very, very wide berth. The effect on the ground is like not nearly as precise as it should be, and you can easily get clipped. So it's one of these fights where you want to be extra cautious. You don't want to take any chances. So make sure you're being super precise with your movement. I find it's always good to just run straight through once you get that hole in the ads, and to don't like cut any corners unless you absolutely have to get away from like the malevolence cone. But in general, you see me using a lot of healing surges to keep the group up, healing wave when I can just to conserve on mana, but also using cloudburst really smartly, as well as downpour and chain heal. I really am using everything in my toolkit here. Like if you rewind and watch the video, you'll see me casting everything that's at my disposal, just because there's so much damage going out. The group is kind of in awkward spots. Like there are a few people who are spread at opposite sides of the room, so chain heal won't always get them. So it's important to use everything you have at your disposal. Alright, if I'm not mistaken, I think this fight gets a little crazy towards the end. Even though we're not making the timer, it still gets really stressful, just because I think we have an omen baited right in the middle at the very end. Oh, and here we go. This actually might be it. Which unfortunately makes if you ever had an omen baited towards the middle and it's like the first one for a certain round, it's going to make your life really hard, especially if you don't have any cooldowns left. So here, if I'm smart, I should use Ascendance, because there is so much damage happening. Yeah, I do. Oh, we do have one death there. I think we're able to get them back up with a B-res, but yeah, I did pop a, no, I didn't pop Ascendant. So honestly, that was really dumb of me. Maybe I was, sort of panicking and I didn't see up, but that Ascendance would have been like a really nice move there when everybody was taking such a huge amount of damage, which is like one of the important things, like I've said a couple of times now. Try to have Ascendance or SLT up for emergencies. Like, don't just use them because you have them. I would say Healing Tide and Ancestral Guidance, sure, use them on cooldown if you want, just to make things easier, but you definitely want to have something for when those emergency, bad baits happen. And yeah, that's it. Honestly, I was sweating that whole fight, so it looks probably a little bit easier than it actually is. But once again, just use your standard healing kit to the best of your ability. Really try to make sure you're baiting the Malevolence Cones as much as you can and as cleanly as you can. And like I said, one of the best tips is putting your second Earth Shield, assuming you're spec'd into the double Earth Shield talent, is putting the second one on, one or two of the people who are baiting. And I feel like that really helps keep them alive. I'd also say if it's your own key and it's your own group and you're the one who's like making the group, if you can, it's actually, I find better to just have one ranged DPS. That actually makes the first boss a little bit harder, but if that's not a concern for you, having one ranged DPS makes it a little bit easier for the baits, because the Omen is always going to target that one person rather than, just targeting like rather than having a chance to target either one of them, which makes things a little bit more confusing, a little bit harder to predict, and a little bit harder to do. Okay, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this guide. I hope it helped you out. Like I said, this boss is, really, really, really tough. Also, if you want actually some general, just if you're still watching the screen, we actually decided not to finish this dungeon because we figured we'd just keep the 24 key and then push that. But anyway, sorry, as I was saying, if you're looking for a guide on how to do the boss mechanics in the best way possible, Grumpsy has a great guide. He's also in the Shaman Discord, so you can check that video out. But anyways, hope this one helped you out for, the Shaman gameplay, and I will see you next time.